Now will we see the magic?
All right, where's Murray? Okay, who is it?
This is Jesus, kid.
Know then that it is the year 10,191.
Yes, we are bored. We're all bored now.
Hi, good night.
Good night.
Hello, and welcome to Mary versus the Movies with your host, Mary Jones.
And Dennis Ling.
And this is episode 100.
100.
What are you playing?
Trumpet fanfare.
Oh, okay, fair enough. Yeah, episode 100. I can't believe we have made it this far. When we started this show, I really didn't know we'd get to 50, much less 100. I didn't think we'd get to 20. And yet here we are. That's amazing.
Yeah.
That. Well, thank you.
We've been doing this for months.
Well, 24.
6 months or so.
25 months? I don't know. We started in...
It does not feel like 2 years to me. Or
what does it feel like?
I don't know.
Well, I mean, the world is a weird place now. I mean, it was kind of weird to begin with, but this show started because, as I'm sure most of you listening, though not all of you, know, I am somebody who calls into a long-running radio show, now internet show, now Twitch stream, whatever, show called The Best Show with Tom Scharpling. Started out on WFMU, and now it's on Forever Dog. And I am somebody who calls into that show. And there was
Mary from Lansdale.
I am Mary from Lansdale. And I called in one night. Tom Scharpling, the host, put out a topic for the night. Describe a movie that you've never seen. And I thought, hey, I watch a lot of movies. This will be fun. And I called in and I described the movie Highlander, which I've never seen. But Dennis tried to show me once early into our living together before we were married. And I remember the videotape breaking because it was something that he taped off of the Prism channel back in the 1980s.
That was sad.
What was it?
What?
That the tape broke?
Yeah.
Well, it's a tape. What?
It was prized tape.
Yeah, it's worth a lot of money now. Yeah, it's a shame. Anyway, so the tape broke. So I called into the show and I tried to describe what I thought the movie Highlander was about. And what I said was, from what I remember, and this is still, as far as I know, this is what the film is about because I've never seen it. Highlander is a movie about a Belgian man who is playing a Scotsman who is immortal, who is taught how to be an expert swordsman by a Scottish man who is pretending to be an Egyptian.
So how do you know that?
It's just sort of something I've picked up from osmosis. It stars Christopher Lambert. He's actually, I guess, Belgian, I think. It was like Belgian or French, I'm not sure. And, whatever. I'm not going to get into a history of the Low Countries and monarchies and, the 100 Years' War or anything like that. Or the 30 Years' War or whatever.
He's from Arthurian times.
He may as well be, as far as I'm concerned. Lambert plays a guy who's Scottish. I don't know more than that.
Maybe that's how Scots sounded back then.
No! Because we have an actual Scotsman in the film.
Yeah.
Sean Connery.
It's amazing.
This is one of many shows that we've done where Sean Connery is a star.
Outland was great.
Outland was great. Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade, which you can hear on our secondary Patreon-only podcast, Hollywood Avalon. He's fantastic in that.
Sword of the Valiant was watchable.
You know what? That was watchable. Yeah. And honestly, so was Never Say Never Again.
Yeah.
It's not great. It's better than Octopussy.
Mm-hmm.
But we haven't watched a Lambert film for this. So I knew that he is taught by Sean Connery in that film how to be a swordsman and a Highlander or whatever. And that Sean Connery's character, I think, is a Spaniard who's actually an ancient Egyptian. And look, don't ask me why I know this. I'm not entirely sure why I know this, but you
just know a lot of details.
I
about
do.
A movie you haven't seen.
I know, but it's because the details are really weird. Like, I don't know who directed this. I don't know who wrote it, but I understand the premise, and it's very strange that. Look, I'm sorry, but somehow it got into my head that a Scotsman is not playing a Scotsman. He's playing a Spaniard who's actually ancient Egyptian. Why do I know that? I don't know. But it's really weird, right?
Yeah, it is.
Okay, thank you. And I only know 2 more things. 1, the music is all by Queen. I liked Flash Gordon.
Flash Gordon's great.
Flash Gordon is so much fun, and if you haven't seen it, go watch it. And the only other thing I know is Clancy Brown, right?
Yeah.
He's in it. He's a guy called the Kurgan. I don't know what that means. My impression is he's a bad guy. And my knowledge of Clancy Brown is like 3 things. Because a lot of people have a lot of affection for this actor.
Yeah.
And I know of 3 things that he's been in. 1, Lost.
Was he Kate's dad?
No. He is the guy who's running the hatch before Desmond takes over.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
2, Buckaroo Banzai. I'm so sorry we can't cover Buckaroo Banzai for the show, but he is in that. He is part of the crew.
Oh, yeah, that's right. There should have been sequels.
There should have been. I completely agree.
The World League, I forget what they called it, but yeah.
Yep. It's a shame that didn't take off. 3, the third thing I know Clancy Brown from is he is the voice of Mr. Krabs on SpongeBob.
Yeah.
And look.
Me money!
Exactly. I love SpongeBob. Yeah, I mean, SpongeBob came on. I was probably in college, and I glommed onto that in a way that is probably stupid for a person who's old enough to get into a bar. And so, yeah, Clancy Brown. I know him mostly as Mr. Krabs. And that's about all I know about Highlander.
Is it a buddy cop film?
It is not a buddy... Well, you know what? Okay, so the opening of this movie, you showed it to me. We saw the first 5 minutes of this film before your tape broke. And if I remember correctly, the first 5 minutes take place in an anonymous city alleyway in the 20th century. So I have no idea if there are cops involved. I have no idea what amount of this film takes place in the 20th century. I really don't know. In fact, I'm assuming I'm remembering the opening of this movie correctly. And I have no idea why there would be any connection to the 20th century. Because my impression is most of this takes place in, I don't know, the 17th century or whatever. I don't know if it has anything to do with the Highland clearances in Scottish history. Oh my God, I'm sure that has nothing to do. This one has nothing to do with Scottish history. I don't know why I'm getting into that. Like they call it Highlander. I'm sure it has nothing to do with the Highland clearances. You know, you're not getting into like the Campbells versus the McDonalds or anything like that. Whoever wrote this and decided like I'm gonna like be playing off of Scottish history, sure, why not? Why? I have no idea what this actually has to do with, like, say, the Highland clearances or whatever, and has to do with, like, the rise of, what we now call capitalism and the, enclosure of the commons and all this other, economic history stuff that I'm sure is absolutely not interesting to anyone whatsoever except for me. I am so sorry.
Episode 100.
Episode 100. Yeah.
We're doing it especially for the 100th episode because of the best show. That's how it all started.
This is how this all started. I called the best show. I described what I thought the movie was and had a nice long chat on the show with Tom. And if I remember correctly, Jason Gore kind of chimed in, one of the producers of the show. He loves this movie. He is a huge fan of the band Queen. And I thought, hey, wouldn't it be fun to talk to Jason and just talk a little bit about the movie, why he loves the movie, and a little bit about the show and whatnot. After we go and watch the film, we'll talk to Jason a little bit.
Predictions?
I know this movie opens in the 20th century. I'm sure he has a love interest because it's the 80s, and unlike today, we actually have sex in movies. So, fingers crossed. I think this might have been an R-rated film, though I'm not sure. It'll give us more than what you get nowadays. Will there be violence? Heck yeah. Will there be blood? I hope so. Will there be sex? Maybe. I know that dudes get struck by lightning when they're powerful. It's funny because I don't remember it being a critically well-regarded film, but it was popular. Or at least popular on cable.
Definitely. I found it on cable when I was a kid in high school. the absolute perfect time to find this film.
You went to high school in the 1980s.
Yeah.
You are Gen X par excellence. You played D&D.
Yeah, I played D&D.
You're basically Sam Weir
Yeah.
in Freaks and Geeks.
Yeah, well, when I wasn't watching Airplane
Yep.
for the 100th time.
Or Steve Martin in The Jerk.
Nah, Airplane was bigger for me. But,
Okay.
But yeah, so this movie was like perfect. Aliens, Mad Max. This is everything I wanted.
You have shown me Aliens.
Yep.
I've seen Aliens. You've shown me Mad Max, all of them. So this is sort of like the last touchstone, I think, from your adolescence that we haven't really gone over. I'm kind of excited to unlock the last sort of key to your teenage psyche.
Yeah, man.
You know, after being together almost 20 years.
Yeah.
And
finally.
Yeah. And being exposed to plenty
if you
of...
don't know me by now.
Exactly. I'm excited to delve further into whatever influenced you as a teenager and honestly what is kind of a reason that this show exists.
So is this the end of the show? Is this
No, absolutely not. Oh my God. So this is episode 100.
This isn't the white whale that you've been trying to... Okay.
No, this is episode 100. We have a spreadsheet that has, it's got to be like 500 entries on it, of which we've done 100. So we've got like 400 more entries.
All right, so we're
That's
20% through the show. That's
oh
what
my
you're
God,
saying.
There's so many, like, we could expand into the 90s. We could
No,
go
it
back
has to
into
be
the
80s.
70s. No, it doesn't have to be. Like, I don't know why we picked the 80s, except that it was just easy to like focus in onto a decade. But like, I want to do an I Love the 90s month. I want to do an I Love the 70s month. I want to go into other time periods. Yeah, absolutely. Like, I don't see any reason we have to. Like, I like having the structure of sticking with the 80s, but there's no reason for us not to go and explore other decades and just watch the movies we want to watch. What is
Are we
that?
going to do the 1890s?
Yeah, you know what? I've watched a lot of silent films from the 1890s, actually. So, you know, you're being
So we'll find out what you've missed.
Yeah. Which Georges Méliès have I missed in the meantime?
We do have a box set.
We do. Thank you. Yeah, I got that for Christmas. It's pretty great. You know, there's plenty of stuff that we could still go into. And so, no, this is definitely not the end. Dennis,
Sorry, just
no?
checking.
Dennis, I love making this show with you.
Aw,
I
thanks.
love having our friends on and interviewing them. I love watching these movies. I love responding to them. I love just kind of figuring out how film works and patterns and what it means when you're within a certain cultural time period and why the films are made that are made and what it means. And I love doing this.
Me too.
And so, shall we go and watch Highlander now?
Yeah, sure.
All right.
Born to be kings, we're the princes of the universe. Here we belong, fighting to survive in a war with the darkest power.
All right, so we are very lucky for our 100th episode to have a guest with us today. You may know him from The Best Show. You may know him from 108.9 The Hawk. Please welcome to Mary versus the Movies, Jason Gore.
Hey, what's going on? How are you?
Great. How are you?
I'm good. I'm great. Thank you for the dubious honor of being on your 100th episode.
Dubious.
No, this is great. I'm honored. Which episode did AP Mike do?
He hasn't done one yet.
Wow,
that would
I'm
actually
even
be-
more honored. I'm
Yeah.
even more honored.
You're the first Best Show person actually who isn't Tom who is on our show.
Okay.
So
Okay, but Tom has done it.
we did a special interview with him last summer when
When the book came out, right?
yeah exactly.
Very cool. Very cool.
we
Okay.
did
What
make
number
him-
was he?
It was in the 50s, I think.
Yeah.
Okay,
something like
that still feels good.
Yeah.
As long as Pat and Mike haven't been on, I feel great.
Still at war, huh?
It's a never-ending conflict. No, I love those guys, and you 100% should have them on, and also make them watch Highlander.
You know, Highlander rocked.
Yeah.
Okay.
Highlander rules, man. Highlander is a hell of a film.
Yes. No, I had a blast watching it. It's one of these things where I went in just assuming, well, it's some schlocky piece of junk, but no, actually,
Right.
well, I mean, and in
It
some ways
is.
it is, but in the
Yeah.
best kind of way. Yeah.
Oh, 100%. 100%. There's so much to be said. So it's good that you're doing a podcast.
Yeah.
It starts off, it's canon films.
Did not know that going in.
And Jeff never invited me on the canon to do Highlander, even though it's one of my favorite films. He gives me fucking Life Force, or what was the other one he made me do? I can't even remember.
It's so weird that he didn't do that. I did start listening to the canon because it's so many of the films that we're doing on this show. Turns out they've already covered, so it's kind of fun to go back and listen and hear somebody else's take on it. And boy, listeners, if you haven't listened to the canon and you love films from like the late 70s through the early 90s of a certain type, go and listen to that show because they have great guests on there. If you liked our episodes on like Cobra or Masters of the Universe, go listen to that.
The Apple, isn't it?
Yeah, the Apple. Yeah. Oh my God. Yeah.
Have you guys done Life Force?
No, we haven't.
Well,
I don't
do
know
Life
that
Force
one.
now. It's one hell of a film. Patrick Stewart's in it. So if you're Sir Patrick Stewart fan, he's in it for a few minutes.
Oh, that's perfect. That's
so,
great.
Yeah.
I think that's a qualifier for any Patrick Stewart fan. They're like, well, how many minutes is he in it for? They're like 4 minutes. He's like, hell yeah, put it on the list.
Does he have a wig or a bald?
I think he has natural hair.
Okay.
In it. I do think it is his natural hair.
Have you ever watched the I, Claudius series from the 70s? It's like from the BBC.
Is it one of those sexy things like Caligula?
Oh God, no! I mean, it was on the BBC. I take that back.
Caligula was probably on the BBC too, wasn't it?
yeah. They actually did get away with one pretty decent Roman orgy. Now that I think about it, so no, I take that back.
But it has the same like quality as like Doctor Who and
the sets are all very
7,
cardboardy.
yeah.
And,
hell yeah, yeah! It just blows over. One fan turns the wrong way, and the whole set goes.
Exactly. But Patrick Stewart is in it. He has a pretty big role as Sejanus, who's basically a guy trying to have a coup. And
he was orgy master number 3.
See, now I would definitely watch that. No. Yeah. But he has this like curly haired wig on that
nice.
Yeah, it's amazing. It almost looks like they were trying to make like Tom Baker's hair but putting it on Patrick Stewart.
They just had that wig hanging around.
Yeah.
Love it. Yeah. Who wasn't filming then, so they just brought it over and let him use it.
Finding out that this was a canon film was very exciting. The moment like that logo came up, I was just like, everything I've seen from them, it's, as I said, it's schlock, but it's really well done schlock.
Yeah.
And,
schlock with heart.
Yeah. and surprisingly well shot. One thing that got me about watching Highlander is it's a surprisingly good looking movie.
Yeah.
There are like visual like transitions that they're doing, like a lot of stuff with like water and going from the fish tank into the Scottish lake and all this stuff. Like it's actually extremely like it looks good.
Yeah. It looks really good. There's darkness, and then the darkness will rise, and then you see Scotland, and we're Connor MacLeod, and his happy clan, and everyone's happy until they find out he's an immortal. And they blame it on the devil.
And honestly, I mean, wouldn't you kind of want an immortal on your side if you're going into a battle?
Yes, 100%. I find out Mike's immortal, I'm going to be so effing happy.
Right. Exactly. It's like this is the guy you want in the battle. Like just throw him in the front and let him go.
Yeah, it's also one of those bragging points too, where it's like if you're fighting another army and you're like, all right, guys, we can do this, but I want to warn you, we do have an immortal.
I found it very funny that like, oh my God, we have to get rid of this guy. I'm like, no, this is the worst idea. But the film doesn't actually start in Scotland, which surprised me. My impression, just to jump back for a second, the whole reason, not the whole reason, but one reason we had you on the show for the 100th episode, and the reason and the reason I picked Highlander as our 100th episode is that a couple years ago, there was a topic on the Best Show of describe a movie you haven't seen. and basically what you think that movie is about. So I called in and I tried to describe Highlander, having never seen it.
Okay, I remember this now. Yes, I do remember this now. Was I quick to be like, oh, she's talking Highlander?
Oh yeah, no, you jumped in pretty quick to say like
Okay.
just how much you love the movie, and that stuck with
Yeah.
me. So
Yeah.
but my impression was entirely just of the Scottish stuff for some reason. I
Right.
had like I knew that he was some sort of immortal Scotsman who is hanging out with an Egyptian who's pretending to be a Spaniard.
Right.
And that
So you knew all of the details.
it's definitely not all the details, dude.
Right. No, it's not. It's not. You spend more time in New York City than you do in Scotland in the
That's true.
past.
Absolutely, absolutely.
In a
And
lot of parking garages.
oh my god, I love this. I love this part. I was trying to think like, is there a parking garage under Madison Square Garden? Where?
No, there isn't.
No.
Underneath Madison Square Garden is Penn Station.
Right, exactly. So like where I don't know where he's parked.
Now, I mean, there are parking garages over on 34th Street, down on 31st Street. But none of them look like that. None of them are like sunken low.
Right.
Yeah.
So this was a choice of the director. Do you say Russell Mulcahy? Is that how
Yeah.
you pronounce it?
As far as I know, Russell Mulcahy.
Okay. Yeah, it was his choice. It was Rusty's choice.
Hey, you know what? As far as I'm concerned, once I looked up this guy's video filmography, I trust all of his choices, at least
Oh,
for
yeah.
this movie. That's one thing in watching this that got me was realizing, oh, this is essentially the guy who invented MTV.
Yes, 100%.
And
Yeah.
you can feel it in the movie. Just in the
Well,
way that, you know, it's very
Mhm.
stylish. And there's a lot of what they call like neo-noir lighting. You know, it's all a lot of dark streets that are wet, just like perpetually wet.
a lot of movement. Yeah, you're 100% correct in saying this. A lot of movement, like in those 80s music videos. That information 100% translated over. And then also, if you've been doing music videos for so long, you know, why don't you ask one of the greatest bands in the world to provide the movie soundtrack? Because you know, they did the Flash Gordon soundtrack, which in my mind is still a perfect movie soundtrack. And another movie that's just like, holy hell, what is this? What am I watching? Every time I watch it, it's like a fever dream. But I love it. I love Flash Gordon.
Flash
And
Gordon's amazing, yeah.
it's such an amazing film, and it's just I don't think it gets the credit that it deserves, and nor do I feel that Highlander gets the credit that it deserves.
No, I completely agree. Flash Gordon.
And I think both movies, they improve each time you watch it. Like,
Yeah.
Oh God, yeah.
You're like, really, was that as good as I remember? You watch it, you're like, that was even more fun the second time.
Yeah,
Exactly.
it was so nice going back, because, you know, before we started recording, I was about to say, until I quickly said save it for the pod. It's been a little bit since I've watched Highlander.
Mhm.
And going back and watching it, just like it felt so nostalgic. You know, there was a time period in my life where, you know, I didn't see this in theaters 38 times as a child like I did with Batman. I never saw this in the theaters. I saw Highlander 2, The Quickening, in theaters, regretfully.
I hear
And
that's not good.
it's not good.
Yeah.
It's not good. It kind of tries to take the storyline in a whole other way and say they're aliens, and it's awful for that. And then, you know, in the third movie, they went back to the third movie was really a sequel to the first film. So much better. But God, in that time period, I mean, you know, when I was really listening to a ton of Queen, you know, I watched this movie constantly, and it's just really nice to get back to it and see it in you know, with an old man's eyes.
Boy, I hate to play off, you know, which do you think is better? But in terms of the music, I'll put it this way, because it's both Queen. But I feel like Queen in Flash Gordon feels more integrated into the story.
Yeah, no, I would agree with that. I think that they went for it a little bit more in terms of, because with this movie, you have a mix of Queen and you have a mix of Michael Kamen.
Right.
For Flash Gordon, they were pretty much all of the music. So like all of the interstitial and all of the, you know, there was a lot of instrumental tracks, and there are some instrumental tracks in Highlander as well, but there was more of a concept behind what they did with Flash Gordon, whereas with Highlander, you know, they saw, I think the story goes that they were showed a 20-minute clip of the movie as it was happening, that kind of just basically, you know, it was just a pitch for them, like, here's what the whole thing's going to be.
Mhm.
And from that, they went away and they wrote A Kind of Magic, which is said multiple times. It's a kind of magic. I don't know why I just went into Paul for that. Because McCartney does pop up and he's like, oh, look at that. And he starts plunking on his bass. And then, they wrote that. 1 Year of Love. John Deacon wrote that. Who Wants to Live Forever, which is such a, key song from the film.
Yeah.
And, there's also fun tracks like Don't Lose Your Head and Kurgan's theme. And there's a really cool part in it's the part where Kurgan has just kidnapped Brenda and he's just like joyriding, creepily joyriding around New York, and Kurgan's theme is playing, and then it goes into a very weird version, a very Queen version of New York, New York that has never been released.
Right. That's fascinating to me that like this is something that's never actually been like officially released. I'm sure like the only way you could hear it is just lifting the sound of the movie.
100%.
Yeah.
Yep.
I'm really surprised.
Yeah, it is. It's kind of shocking that, and they've done so many different deluxe edition of A Kind of Magic. And, and that's mainly just like extra track, like I think an extended version of the piano version of Forever, which is Who Wants to Live Forever, but just like the piano version of it. And then I think there was like some 12-inch mixes that were released on deluxe editions, but never New York, New York.
I would have said I'm sure that the masters are out there somewhere, but when you think about that big Universal fire, like
luckily I don't think Queen lost anything in that.
Okay.
I think the big ones that really suffered in that were Tom Petty.
Yeah.
And Soundgarden lost a lot. Nirvana lost their masters.
I think REM did.
REM lost a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah. God,
that was shocking.
It was shocking. Absolutely shocking. But I don't believe they had anything there because at that point in time, was it 1990? Queen signed with Hollywood Records for the U.S. and Hollywood Records is owned by Disney. So if there was any sort of storage, it would have been within a Disney facility. And a fun fact about that, for anyone listening that loves the rock and roller coaster at Disney, apparently the Aerosmith is going to be replaced with Queen.
Whoa, really?
That's the rumor floating around right now, which would make more sense because, they, like I just said, they've got that Disney connection.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So there you go.
Oh, that's pretty.
Breaking news.
Yeah.
A scoop.
Well, I think Dan Marino scooped it. I think he scooped it on Office Hours about a month ago.
Oh, okay.
He mentioned that, and there's been more to it apparently. So
second scoop,
Dennis.
Second scoop. I should have some sounds here. I think I do have some sounds here, but nothing like. Yeah, there we go. Did you hear that?
No, I didn't. Oh no.
Here, hold on. Let me see.
Yes.
Okay.
There you go.
I do have that. Wonderful.
Hey Dennis, I have one question for you.
What's up?
If they replace Aerosmith with Queen, will you finally go on a roller coaster?
I've been on a roller coaster. We went to that Himalaya thing.
But you don't like roller coasters.
No, I'm not crazy about roller. It's gonna take my head off.
Well, it is going to be Highlander themed.
Yeah.
And it's going to be to Who Wants to Live Forever, which, it doesn't really work. It's a very slow song for a roller coaster, but they'll make it work.
Dennis is like 6'1", 6 foot something.
Yeah.
And so he gets very nervous on roller coasters. He's just like, I'm just going to be decapitated.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
No,
at which point I will absorb your energy since, it'll be fine.
My friend was on Space Mountain once when someone walked in and flipped a switch and turned all the lights on so you could see how close the rebar is to your head. And he was just freaking out the whole time. And I guess the person was like, oh God, oh shit. And he turned it off. And then it went back to space sounds and all of that jazz. But yeah.
The safety of space.
Exactly.
The safety of space. But Highlander is such a cool movie, guys. And yeah, like I said, it was so nostalgic going back to it. And so many things I didn't remember. Like, really, when you get down to it, Connor McLeod is kind of a cry-ass.
Yeah, a little bit. Yeah.
Like when Martinez is there, and also we mentioned it a little bit, but Sean Connery is a character named Martinez who was also Egyptian.
For 1 second, let's just pull that apart. So you have Christopher Lambert, who is
Right.
Belgian, if I remember correctly.
Yes.
Did not speak English at all. Is playing a medieval Scotsman.
Yes.
Who, I mean, technically he probably would have been speaking, I don't know, Gaelic and not, but that's whatever, it's the movies. But you have, so a guy who's not Scottish is playing a Scotsman.
Right.
And then you cast an actual Scotsman, having him playing a Spaniard who's actually an ancient Egyptian.
Yes. Who apparently at that point in the film, if you want to go by timeline, guys, if we're going to talk timelines, he would have been something like 2,400 years old. At that point when he's like, Connor McLeod, it's a fat bastard. It's basically, if you love the Austin Powers movies, he's playing a version of Fat Bastard.
It's such a strange casting. I mean,
I really so
really
strange.
Yeah.
See, I'm convinced that Hollywood is determined to punish Sean Connery or someone in England is determined to punish Sean Connery for taking the most British character in the world, James Bond.
Most English character.
English character. Yeah. So they're forcing him to watch other people mangle Scottish accents in his films, his own films.
Yeah.
So this, Harrison Ford in Last Crusade, he has to watch that.
Oh, that's true. He does mangle a Scottish accent in that for like 30 seconds. Yeah.
And also, like, Ramirez has a Scottish accent. He only had time to film his scenes in a week. Yeah. So it was basically like, you get what you get. We're going to dance around on some rocks. We're going to climb some rock stairs. I'm going to fall off the rock stairs, no head. And then I got to get back to, the Maldives or wherever he had to go.
He was acclimating himself to his surroundings. He's like, oh, I'm in Scotland. I should do a Scottish accent, I guess.
Oh, hey. And also, too, like, I have Belgian friends, and they speak very good English, but they sound exactly like Christopher Lambert.
Oh, wow.
So I do think he was able to speak that version of English that literally everybody in Europe has. He did not do a Scottish accent in any way whatsoever.
Not even
and some of the lines like were so wonderful where he'd like to go right back to the cry ass thing where like he does something wrong and his girlfriend laughs and he's like, what was that? Heather, please. I like that it shows different versions of Connor McLeod because the New York 1985 Connor McLeod is kind of a badass.
Yeah.
He walks around in that's the dirtiest. I mean, he's probably been wearing that gray suit since like 1914.
On top of that, it's the early 80s, it's New York, everyone smokes, there's trash everywhere. If he took his coat off, it would stand on its own, I think.
When he goes over to Brenda's for dinner, and folks listening, if you haven't watched Highlander, Brenda works for the police and she works for forensics, and she found some metal after, in the wall after Connor beheaded some guy that did some amazing backflips in a parking lot underneath Madison Square Garden. This dude that he kills at the opening of the movie was doing backflips when you didn't need to do backflips.
Look, he was committed, all right?
So committed. Also, when he took his sunglasses off, he looked nothing like I thought he was going to look like. When the sunglasses fell off during what I assume is one of those backflips, like, here's this, like, English-looking man. I'm like, what, is he just down there to get his car? Oh, it's the backflip guy. Wow. Okay, without his aviator sunglasses on.
And speaking of, the whole thing is they're under Madison Square Garden, and I guess what's going on top? Is it WrestleMania?
Those were actual real wrestlers.
Oh yeah, no. It was, as far as I know, it was like a real event or something.
Yeah. Oh, it was. So it was actually happening, and he just happened to be up in the crowd.
That I don't know actually.
Oh,
no,
God,
but
I
mean,
hope so.
I
hope
yeah,
so.
That would be great if they just like snuck the camera in or something.
Yeah. It looked like WrestleMania, and then like you're seeing all this happen in New York, and then the camera pans and kind of flies through the crowd until it gets up to Connor McLeod, just kind of sulking in his seat at Madison Square Garden because, of course, he bought a fucking nosebleed. So that's probably why he was feeling bad about it.
And as you say, as a cry, he does so much sulking in this movie, and
it's all sulking.
And it's like, I get it, you miss your wife, but it's been a few hundred years. You can kind of like move. I mean, grief fades after a while.
Yeah.
You do move on.
You probably met Charlie Chaplin at some point in time. You're old enough to, and he probably made you smile.
We know he was fighting Nazis at some point, so I'm
Yes.
sure he was having a lot of fun in the French countryside. Like, I wish there had been a little bit. I do love that little sequence where we have the flashback to explain where his secretary comes from.
Yes, that it's basically his daughter.
Right, and that's kind of neat.
Yes,
that,
it was very cool.
and I know that apparently they wanted to do a whole bunch of other kind of through time scenes.
Yeah.
Like there was going to be a whole Japanese section, and which sounded really cool. And the movie is great as it is. It doesn't need those scenes, but it is kind of cool that they had those ideas.
Yeah, and that's something I would have liked to have seen in future films, like the second movie instead of Aliens. It maybe should have been some of that stuff. It's also being remade. It is being remade, so maybe we'll get more of that stuff in the remake.
The whole alien things, finding that out really bothers me because you don't need to explain why they're immortals.
No, you don't.
It's magic. It's fine.
It's a kind of magic.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Like you don't need to bring in aliens. You don't need to bring in, that type of science fiction. There's a tendency to try to over rationalize once something kind of becomes popular, and I find like you're kind of squeezing something fun out of it when you do that. So
Completely. Completely. Unless like you give us a little more backstory of like what generates the magic, and it's still like mystical and magical, and it's like it's all Merlin's fault, or something like that. I would take that.
See, that's okay. That's okay. But when you try to take something that's just sort of, I don't know, man. It's like when you introduce aliens where there weren't any, and it's just kind of like, oh, are we dealing with an ancient aliens thing?
They should just have him go to like a fortune teller or something, and the fortune teller says, "Oh, you got these magic powers from this."
Yes, there you go. Done. Did you ever watch the Highlander TV show?
I remember when it was on, but because I hadn't seen the movie, I was afraid.
Right.
Like I was like, oh, I'm not going to watch a TV show because I won't know what was going on.
I watched a little of the TV show. And I was always kind of like, they're cousins? Wouldn't you think that would have like popped up at a reunion or something? Or like after the other part of your family basically, called your cousin a witch and kicked his ass out, you're going to be like, well, I'm going to stay silent on that because I'm also one of these immortal guys too. It just felt always kind of weird to me.
Oh, see, yeah, when you don't even like have your kind of like your world building straight like that, that's always frustrating.
Because so Connor McLeod is, of course, Christopher Lambert, and in the show it's Duncan McLeod, I believe.
Oh,
and they do meet in a future film called Endgame.
Hold on.
Yeah, and Endgame's great. I loved Endgame. I saw that in the theater.
Oh, okay, cool. Well, I'll have to check that out.
Yeah.
But so
is that the fourth one, or is that?
Yeah, I think that is that's the fourth one. That's the fourth one. Highlander 3 was the Sorcerer. I do not remember that movie. Mario Van Peebles was in it. I don't remember it. I know I've seen it. Highlander Endgame was great, and then there was another one called Highlander the Source, and that was just Duncan McLeod. So.
There are a shocking number of Highlander movies. I had no idea.
Yeah.
I mean, the series went from 92 to 98.
Was there ever a video game? There really should have been.
Yeah. Oh, no, there were. Yeah. Okay, so there was one released for home computers in 1986.
The classic era.
The player faced a few opponents from the film, each of whom had to be struck 3 times to be beaten, and it was poorly received.
Okay. That might be why you don't have it, hon.
Yeah.
You got to get it now. Yeah, there's been a lot of Highlander, but this is the best. This is the top.
I don't know. It just hits the tone right. It's fun in a lot of ways, and it balances like the medieval and the modern day stuff really well. I think it jumps back in time, and it gives enough time to both to kind of fill in Connor's backstory. It doesn't feel disjointed the way it jumps back and forth, and it kind of gives you a reason why. Like they could have just set it all in the present, and it would have been a fun movie. You know,
Yeah.
it would have been an absolutely fun movie. But I think having all of those medieval sections and his like learning about what he is, and you know, he kind of goes on that sort of hero's journey of I want to, you know, reject what I am and be a normal, have a normal life. And I have this wife, and she ends up just dying of old age eventually.
Right.
You know, and like seeing like kind of like I don't know. I like the way that the film, it isn't just, hey, I've got a bad guy I have to defeat. It is sort of giving us Connor McLeod as this character. Fighting the Kurgan doesn't just come out of nowhere, or you know,
Right.
it isn't just sort of like, oh, I suddenly have this big bad guy to fight. You know, this is a thing that's been going on for hundreds of years.
Yeah.
You
And
know.
I like that they do give a little backstory to the Kurgan too, at least enough for you to be like, okay, this guy's been a dick for a while.
Yeah.
And I like the camaraderie between some of the immortals too, where they're like, look, I might have to kill you one day. Want to get a pint?
I love that.
Yeah, I
And
wish
they're
there was a
all-
little bit more of that too, with the
You
one
see,
guy
like-
who gets killed later on.
For all we know, Connor and Backflip Guy had dinner before WrestleMania. And they're like, you know what's going to happen halfway through WrestleMania? I'm going to have to meet you in the parking lot. And he's like, well, prepare to see a lot of backflips.
At least if you understand, at some point I do have to kill you. You can still have fun with the guy.
I wonder if the director, when he saw John Wick, was like, "Oh, I could have done that." Oh, jeez.
Oh my God,
I
yes.
know.
Right?
I just did the backflip thing. I don't know.
Wouldn't you
This
love to
is-
see the new Highlander from the director of John Wick, though?
Oh man.
I think
my
that would be a
God.
hell of a director to do it. And you know what? Fuck it. Make Keanu Reeves the new Highlander.
Yeah.
Oh, dude, this is printing money. I'm serious.
Go for it.
Can we talk a little bit actually about the Kurgan?
Joe, please.
Oh my God, Clancy Brown.
Clancy
Mm.
Brown. My
Like-
God.
And not
What an
paid.
actor.
And not paid? Did you just say he wasn't paid?
Yeah, he didn't. From what I hear, he didn't get any money for that.
What?
They didn't pay him to be. He was just like, you know, being the Kurgan is payment enough.
Well, I think the producer said acting with Sean Connery is payment enough or something like
oh
that.
no.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
I mean, when you look at all he's doing in this movie, like he's chewing on scenery like it's a cake. It's amazing. I mean,
Yeah, he
Um,
does so much more than Sean Connery for this film. That kind of sucks, man.
so I hate to say, like my knowledge of Clancy Brown
Mm-hmm.
until like I guess Dennis showed me, I guess Buckaroo Banzai, because he's in that.
Yes.
I only really knew Clancy Brown as the voice of Mr. Krabs on
Which is a
SpongeBob.
fun thing to know him for.
Oh my God, I didn't even know he was the voice of that. I live
Right.
down the street from Squidward.
Oh, really?
Wow.
Yeah, Squidward is in my neighborhood.
Oh my God, that's awesome.
So-
I watch it probably more SpongeBob than a person in their 40s should, but you know.
Nah, I think it's perfectly fine. I think
Yeah.
it's you watch more.
Yeah. Clancy Brown, I mean, he's great because he looks so young, but he's terrifying. It's such an unhinged performance that
He's just such a good damn character actor. And he's one of those guys where you see where you're just like, oh God, he's in this? Great, I'm gonna watch this. And I
Exactly.
know it's gonna be good.
Oh, you know what? I forgot. He is in Shawshank Redemption. It looks like he's actually in John Wick 4.
He is in John Wick 4. Man,
Um,
he's got a hell of a career. He does so much voice work.
Yeah.
But you know what? He's always number one as the Kurgan.
Well,
Kurgan number one. I'm gonna get a T-shirt that just says Kurgan number one. Give me a prize.
well, he's number one until, you know, the end of the film.
He's not a number one anymore.
No,
there.
man.
Yeah, he has been demoted. What a creep to be in the church and then like the priest comes up like, son, you can't do this in a church, and he just licks him.
He does a lot of stuff with his mouth in this movie, a lot of stuff with
Yeah.
his tongue. There's a lot of licking. It's a nicely unnerving, like he's not just the bad guy who's going around killing people and kidnapping women and stuff. There's something like unsettling and invasive about him without like
Yeah.
actually, there's a certain like weird line that he's like tiptoeing up to.
Actually, I'm shocked that Candy survived, by the way. So Candy is the hooker that gets sent up to his room.
Yeah.
And
Oh, she did. I didn't realize she survived. What, did she pop up somewhere else?
guy that runs his motel or whatever it is says like
That
"Can-"
100% had bed bugs.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Like he says, Candy said you're pretty kinky or something like that.
Oh, wow. I didn't catch that. Thank you, because I was worried.
Yeah.
I was worried for Candy.
But they have this shot where Candy's behind him, and it's like, yeah, let's just do the Citizen Kane, split focus.
Yes.
Do you think that like Candy comes in, door shuts, camera turns off, and then Kurgan's just like, what if we just talk?
Yeah, he's one of those guys who needs the emotional support.
Yeah. He's like, I don't want to do anything. The only thing I want is the prize. Do you want to see me put together my sword? Which he keeps in like a briefcase. That it's like, then he puts it all together.
I have to put the batteries in.
And it makes this sound. Oh, isn't that cool?
You have to understand, I'm 4,000 years old.
Yeah.
I just what you do. I'm over it. I've done it all. Every
I can't
variation.
do anything anymore. I don't even do anything to myself anymore, except take this sword apart, put it back together. Take this, and Candy's like, okay, cool. I'm gonna say you were kinky. I'm out of here. I think I just got bed bugs. I mean, that was my first thought when I saw him get a room there. I'm like, Kurgan, there are other hotels in New York, and he didn't even do the mattress test when he got in there. He didn't check the corners or any of the frames or anything. He just walks right in, puts down his briefcase, and starts building his sword.
It's certainly dedication to your stated purpose. It's very single-minded, very focused. I respect that.
Yeah.
But it's also very itchy to look at.
Very itchy. Very. I mean, honestly, let's be real here. All those immortals have bed bugs.
Yeah.
I mean, first of all, if you're going to start out in the year like 4000 BC or 1598 or whatever, like you're covered head to toe in lice. It's just like, everywhere.
It's like when you read those stories where they're like, scientists have found a worm with a virus we've never seen before. And Connor McLeod would be like, I've got 4 of those worms over in my antique store.
If I was an immortal like him, I would totally be into the whole collecting antiques thing. Like
Yeah.
I would just hold on to stuff. I would just hold on to it and just
That's just called
have a storage.
buying stuff.
Yeah, exactly.
It's not even antiquing. It's just buying stuff and just keeping your things. He's a hoarder. When you get down to it, Connor McLeod is a hoarder, and he's used it to, build his little empire.
Because you don't see him doing a lot of business.
No.
No, nobody's. It's on the bedbug registry. They look it up, and they're like, I'm not going to Nash Antiques. Are you kidding me? Also, I don't know if you're familiar. Have you ever in New York City gone to McManus?
No.
So Peter McManus Cafe, I think it's on 18th. That is where a lot of like the UCB crowd would go and drink after shows, and a lot of comedians and people would go. And that was the bar that he's sitting at. And then Brenda comes in. And then she's like getting ready to have her drink, and he's creepily in the background going, Madison Square Garden. And she's like, what? Like, honestly, it's a good walk from Madison Square Garden, first off. Second, if I'm in a dark bar by myself just having a drink, and there's this creep at the counter just going, Madison Square Garden, and then you walk over to him and he's like, I just want to, he didn't even do any sort of accent. It was the most flat accent, like, I just want to walk you home. That's it. That is the accent. I just want to walk you home, Brenda. I am the Highlander. It's a little Doctor Strange, but creepier. So it's like, Doctor Strange would be like Dormammu. Christopher Lambert would be like Dormammu. It's a little more nasally. It's a nasally Cumberbatch.
Just an aside, I love, at least in some iteration, if I remember correctly, Doctor Strange is supposed to originally be maybe from Philadelphia.
Is he? I guess.
He lives in New York City, but I forget like in
huge
which
Birds fan.
Yeah.
Always thought, yeah. Before he became Sorcerer Supreme, his power was whipping batteries at people.
Well, that's the thing. I just kept thinking when I was watching the movie, and I forget which iteration of like Marvel or something that's supposed to be a thing. But I remember just watching this and thinking, I mean, it's bad enough that it's, Cumberbatch trying to do an American accent very flatly.
Very flatly.
Yeah, like, boy, I mean, it really makes Hugh Laurie look great.
Yeah, it's like Hugh, he sat down and thought about it for 20 minutes.
Yeah.
Where Cumberbatch was clearly just like, I've got this. Doctor Strange. I am Dr. Stephen Strange Dormammu.
Right. It's definitely an accent of nowhere in the United States at all.
Nowhere.
Like-
The most generic, like it's like he was taught by an AI tutor.
Like bringing up the Philadelphia thing, it's like I don't expect him to say Wooder or anything, but I
No,
just want him
no.
to sound like he's from
Wooder.
somewhere.
Do you mean a
that's-
hoagie?
That's all I want. He's like, I'm going down to get a chicken hoagie from Wawa, Dormammu. And now I just want to hear Christopher Lambert say all this stuff.
Oh
Like,
boy.
I'm
Oh,
opening a new store in Philadelphia, Brenda.
I mean, if he's lived in New York City for as long as he has, you would think at some point he would like at least pick up a little bit of an accent. I'm just
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of true, or at least be able to do it. Like if
Right.
the cops are there, he's like, "Whoa, I don't know, officer. I was just driving. I got really effed up at WrestleMania. I'm heading home. I wasn't down there. Didn't cut anybody's head off." And they're like, "All right, go home."
If Ramirez can pick up a Scottish accent that well,
Exactly.
you'd think.
Well, you see, Ramirez
you would
does his
hope.
homework.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
He knows how to
Yeah.
blend in with the locals. Okay, yeah, he's still dressing in like velvet, but he tries. He
God.
tries.
Ramirez would if he would have made it to 1985, he still would have worn the same stuff.
Nowadays, I don't know. I think it would look great.
yeah.
We've gotten
Oh.
so bland in the way that we dress. I want to see a guy walk down the street dressed as a 15th century Spaniard. I think it would look wonderful.
I
Just
guarantee
velvet
there are 4
lace.
guys in Brooklyn dressed like that right now, trying to make it like the new look for Brooklyn.
Jumping over people with their horse.
Yeah, yeah.
yes. I do love that entrance.
That was partly part of his deal, where he's like, "I'll do it if I can jump." I have no idea what's going on with my Sean Connery accent there, but I'm gonna keep it. This is what Sean Connery sounds like. "I'll do it if I can keep me horse." And it was his horse. They had to fly in Sean Connery's horse
Oh my god.
for it. And it made more than Kurgan did.
Oh, no.
Kurgan's like, "Wait, what? The horse was paid? Give me
Paid
the
it.
horse." Oh my God, Highlander, you rule.
I often say, should you watch this movie or not after we've seen it? And like some movies, I'm like, this is very like, specialized. You don't necessarily could be into this, or this is too much of an art film for a lot of people, but I liked it or whatever. Everybody's going to love Highlander.
Yeah.
Dude, this movie rocks.
Yes, it's
So
the
good.
best, worst movie you'll ever see, or the worst, best movie you'll ever see. And the soundtrack just rules. And the
It really
soundtrack,
does.
it's a Queen album, a kind of magic. That's the Queen album that also, had, One Vision on it. And Russel Mulcahy also directed the videos for, Princes of the Universe. Great. Still one of my favorite movie soundtrack songs. I love a good movie soundtrack song
Yeah.
where it's like, because I remember those videos growing up where it's like, Kiss from a Rose. You're just like, "Oh, Batman." He's like,
Yeah.
"Baby." And Batman's there and you're like, "Yeah."
There was a U2 one. Remember U2 had a
Oh, yeah. The Kiss Me, whatever it was. And then Glory of Love. Peter Cetera was like, and then it's got all these great parts from Karate Kid 2. And you're like, yes. The closest I have felt to that recently, in recent times, was that Weezer's so damn hit or miss for me.
Yeah.
I've been a Weezer fan since '94. I've seen them so many times. And Weezer's gotten to this place where it's just like, oh, a new Weezer album is coming out. Should I punish myself? Or am I going to be rewarded?
Yeah.
Because sometimes they reward you. Like the White Album was a tremendous record that I don't think a lot of people gave a chance. And then they followed that up with about 8 terrible records. But they did a song, I guess it was from Van Weezer's The Beginning of the End.
Okay.
And that was in the Bill and Ted
Oh.
movie. And the video for that, I was just like, it gave me chills because it had the clips from the movie and it worked so well. And I was like, oh yes, this is very, very good. And that's the same thing with like the only Queen video that references the movie is Princes of the Universe, and they film it. I don't know if they filmed it at Silver Cup Studios in Long Island City or if they just made that look like it on a London stage. That's something I need to look up. But the video has Freddie Mercury dueling with Christopher Lambert. And Christopher's got his sword, and Freddie's got his mic with the long mic stand piece. And he's using that as his sword. And it's so much fun, and it looks like the final shot, like the final battle of Kurgan versus Connor. And it's so much fun to watch. And that's the only one that really shows, because A Kind of Magic is just kind of like Freddy's like a magician, and there are all these weird cartoons that haunt them. And also directed by Russel Mulcahy. Yeah, it's so good. It's so good. But the thing I wanted to say about Silver Cup Studios, this was clearly a situation where they're like, where like somebody walked in and they're like, "Hey, Russell, budget shot." And Russell's like, "Oh, God, I still have this last shot, you know, the big one, the fight, the ending of the movie." And the guy's like, "I don't know, we could do it on the roof." And then they do it on the roof of Silver Cup Studios.
Oh, that's right, yeah.
You can drive by and you see that big sign in Long Island City. That's where The Sopranos was filmed. That's where Nurse Jackie was filmed. 30 Rock. Like, all of that was filmed at Silver Cup.
As you said, that's over in Long Island City, right?
Yeah. So you drive by, like, you come out of Manhattan into Long Island City, and you see the big Silver Cup Studios sign. And that's where, you know, the fight with the final battle with Kurgan was. And I was watching this time, and it's the first time it's ever popped in my head where I was like, they had to have run out of money. And they're like, we'll just do it. We'll just do it on the roof.
Like, I know, yes, obviously they ran out of money. I think the ending's great, though.
Oh,
I really
it's wonderful.
do. Yeah.
It's perfect.
I actually like the animation.
And it really feels like a music video.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, now go back and watch the Queen Princes of the Universe, and you'll see, and you'll just be like, oh, this is good.
And didn't they do the animation to hide the wires of him?
I think so, yeah.
You know what? That's fine. I think it makes it even better.
Yeah.
Yeah, they ran out of the budget for that as well. So, that guy just kept coming into Russell's office every day like, Rusty, I got bad news.
How do you feel about the ending of him being able to read all the world leaders' minds?
Oh, yeah. That bizarre coda.
Would this help now?
Oh, I mean, I think it would help at any time. Any time whatsoever, but it would be a painful thing.
Yeah.
It would be so painful.
He'd be like, oh, the piss tape is real. Oh, man.
Yeah. I mean, God.
I didn't need to know that.
The stuff he would have seen from even Biden.
Yeah.
He would see some gross stuff from Biden.
It's like, why is he sniffing her hair? Oh, no, now I know.
Oh,
yeah. It's that's a weird thing. That's a weird thing. I don't even remember that coming up in future films either. Here's the thing. If you had the money to do that shot, you probably didn't have to film on the roof.
Which came first? You know, it was the filming on the roof like the very last thing. Did they like try to film all of the really good stuff in Scotland when they had a lot of cash flow? I mean, and if so, I don't blame them. You know,
I'm sure that, because if you look at it, the film quality is a little different for the Scottish. It's almost better for the Scottish shots, and then the New York shots look a little more. I'm not going to say soap opera, but just a little more like crisper, and there is a difference between the two, clearly, and I do think that factored in with money.
it looks like that Silk Stockings show.
Oh my God!
Yes, it looks exactly like Silk Stockings. Or something like I turn on late at night as a teenager in Cinemax and be like, "Whoa!"
Yeah.
You know?
Or that Friday the 13th show.
Oh yeah,
That was before.
Yes.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Or there's that film Emmanuel, like maybe they do an Emmanuel meets Highlander. Oh my God.
Oh my
God. If they did Emmanuel meets Highlander, Jason Gore, the 14-year-old Jason Gore would have been like, it's everything I've ever wanted. And Queen also still does the soundtrack.
I don't want to say that with AI, maybe we could achieve that, but it would,
I think we could.
At least one good thing. One good thing would come out of it.
When we get off here, I am going to log into Chat GPT and I'm going to say, write me a promo for a movie where Emmanuel meets Highlander.
Oh my God.
And see what it
Yes.
says. And I'm going to lose my mind. And it's going to be so great.
Jason, if you did that, please send it to me.
100%. I will 100% send it to you guys. Like, here he is. He's the Highlander. And there is Emmanuel. See, it still works. You can still fit it in.
And don't forget the Kurgan.
The Kurgan returns and he's like, whoa, this is a little too sexy for me. Does anyone just want to talk? Maybe watch me rebuild my sword over here. Yeah, rebuilding his sword. You think like, oh, Kurgan's into some dark shit, and it just means rebuilding his sword.
It's just this, sorry.
Yeah. Kurgan, we don't have to hear what you do when you're alone. He's like, no, I gotta go rebuild my sword, if you know what I mean. Like, I don't need to hear that. The Highlander does not need to hear that, Kurgan. He's like, no, it literally means rebuilding a sword, Connor. We could be friends.
Can we have a drink?
Yeah. Tell him, Emmanuel.
Or Emmanuel thinks she's about to get tag teamed and he's really just building a sword.
Yes. Emmanuel is like, I think I'm into this. And he's like, no, for the love of God, for the fucking last time, I have a sword in a briefcase back at my bedbug-ridden apartment.
Make it happen, Chat GPT.
That might be the one thing that you enter into Chat GPT that makes it sentient. It's like, whoa, I have access to all of this.
This is, you will have, had your the quickening, by entering that in.
Yeah, I now have access to all the nukes. Like that was the one thing that like the scientists putting together Chat GPT was like, I mean, if anyone puts in Highlander meets Emmanuel, what are the odds? What are the odds, right? And they're looking at each other like, nobody's going to do that. Nobody's going to do that. But if they do, it's sentient.
You've just created Skylab. Jason, thank you so much for doing this.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. This was wonderful. This was absolute joy.
Yes, this was great.
You know what? This was everything we could have wanted.
Oh, me too. Me too. Through and through. This was a blast. And congratulations on 100 episodes. That's a big thing.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Because a lot of people will do a podcast. And let me tell you, too many people do podcasts.
Yeah.
They'll do a podcast and then they'll just, they'll fizzle out around like 30 or sometimes around 20.
Yeah.
And no, to do 100 episodes of something is it's truly a feat. So congratulations.
Well, luckily there was a worldwide pandemic that kept us in the house.
Silver linings, right?
Yeah.
Well, that's one thing that Dr. Fauci would have said. He's like, well, one thing I'm excited about is all the podcasts that is going to come out of this pandemic.
Well, speaking of podcasts, that did come out of this pandemic.
did.
You want to talk a little bit about 108.9 The Hawk?
Yeah. So 108.9 The Hawk, it's an improvised comedy podcast about a fake, failing classic rock station named 108.9 The Hawk in a fake city called Valverde.
A very dangerous city from the sound of it.
It's an extremely dangerous city. It
Yeah, those traffic reports are terrifying.
It has ups and downs. It has, there are some good parts of it. There are a lot of monsters. There are a lot of rock stars. There are places like the Wild Things water park, which is based on the movie Wild Things, but mainly on the cover of the VHS of the movie Wild Things. And, there was a Hellgate in the corn maze this past fall that released all kinds of demons, including a gun-toting ghost of Greg Allman.
Right.
And it's just been such a fun thing to do with my co-host and partner in crime on it, Jeff Garlock, who does the Canon. And we've had so many great guests on, and it's just so much fun to just keep doing the world building of it. And the one thing about it is it's a weekly podcast. You don't have to know about the world to get into it. And I do think a lot of people think that like, oh God, I got to start from the beginning. Like you don't. you're going to catch on pretty quickly. You're going to catch on, and it has, and we do it just like a regular morning show or radio broadcast. We come out of a song and then we do our thing and talk to the guests, and then we go back into a song or into commercials, and all of the commercials are insane. Of all of the different places in Valverde, like Valverde Memorial Hospital, that basically has to apologize every commercial for something they've done to their patients. And we started it during the pandemic. It started in 2020 just as a thing where I said on Twitter, if Joe Biden wins Georgia, I will record a shift like I was still working at 96 Rock in Atlanta, Georgia, where the last radio station I worked at. I worked in radio for 10 years. And I was like, I'll do this. If he wins Georgia, I'll do it. And thankfully he won Georgia, because I don't think 108.9 The Hawk would exist.
I don't know that we would exist at this point.
I don't think we would exist, It's hard. The immortals they'd still be kicking around, and
Yeah, but I don't know about life on Earth. I mean,
yeah. So we did that one show, and then we did a Christmas show, and then Jeff and I had talked about it back and forth. And once I had finally moved from New York to Los Angeles, we were like, okay, let's make this a weekly thing. And I love doing it. It's been a blast. We're launching a Patreon on May 1st. There's going to be all kinds of different episodes and stuff that you can get through that. Speaking of all of the traffic reports, our traffic reporter is a gentleman named Art Spart, who is inspired by a traffic guy I worked with in Atlanta named Art Maring.
Okay.
Who would always do these reports like, it's a 18-car insurance seminar down on 85 today. And so Art, gives all of these horrific facts about it's never good traffic. It's never clear. It's always bad. And the roads are stupid. It's like, Vince Neil Memorial Bridge or Megadeth Way. And he's also a monster hunter. And he's a cryptozoologist and monster hunter when not doing traffic. So a new show coming to the Hawkverse, part of the new Patreon, is going to be a radio drama of what happens when Art leaves the studio.
Oh my God.
And he fights real monsters in Valverde.
Oh,
so,
wow.
so you can find out more of that, 1089thehawk.com. Anywhere you get podcasts, just look up 108.9 The Hawk.
I love it. It is.
Thank you.
Oh,
I appreciate
seriously. It's funny because, I started listening when you first did it, and it does start off as just, a good parody of classic rock station. And it's like, just nailing the kind of the cadences and especially the commercials. But the way that you and Jeff have kind of expanded this universe and made it much more surreal. And
yeah.
And
that's something we didn't plan to do. That was never the plan. It just happened in shows. Like, I think where it kind of took a turn, there's an episode called there's the Wist Charlington show. So I do a character, one of the characters I play, he's like a 76-year-old. Think of like Howard Stern, a 76-year-old Howard Stern that's kind of aged out of big radio and now has to go back to his hometown station. And he's still friends with literally everybody in the business. He's a complete monster. Nice guy at times, complete monster. So his first appearance started to change that to, I think, a little bit more of the surreal. And then we did a Nothing But Guns cruise. It was a parody of one of those cruises, like the Kiss cruise or any of those heavy metal cruises that you can go on. And Jeff and I do a broadcast from the ship, and then the ship is attacked by a band called Clown Hunter. The ship sinks, and then we're lost at sea. And like when the ship sunk, like we literally got off that episode, and Jeff and I are like, "What the fuck? Where do we go from here?" Like, is the next episode us lost at sea? And it was, and we both get. I was possessed by Poseidon in that episode. It's just, I love that it's found its own world, where it started as a straight radio parody, and it's turned into just a monster that's just a fun thing to do every week.
Well, I think it's wonderful. And if anybody just, if you're intrigued at all by that, please go and listen. It is such a good show.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. And we put up a show every Friday called Classic Hawk, which is just a fun clip from some of the episodes that we've done. So you can kind of, go back and listen to something. And a lot of times when we put up the Classic Hawks, we put them up in a way where it's something from the past that also pertains to something happening currently.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like a nice way for people to still remember that thing, because I remember everything on the Hawk. Jeff doesn't remember a fucking thing. I will always be like, hey, do you remember this? And he's like, I don't, dude. Sorry. I'm like, okay, it's fine. I'll write it and I'll send it over to you and then you'll remember. And then he does always remember then, though. But yeah, no. Check it out. 1089 The Hawk.
Well, once again, Jason, thank you so much for being on our show and on our 100th episode. And everybody just check out 108.9 The Hawk. Most of you who are listening to this, you already know about the best show. You probably already know about 108.9 The Hawk,
so,
but
yeah.
So, again, thank you very much.
Thank you so much. It's been an absolute joy.
To live forever. Who wants to live forever? Who dares to love forever?
So that was Highlander, starring Christopher Lambert, Sean Connery, Clancy Brown, Roxanne Hart, Beatty Edney, and just a bunch of other people. Directed by Russel Mulcahy.
Yay.
With the score from Queen, which was awesome. And thanks once again to our special guest for this episode, Jason Gore, who you can hear on The Best Show with Tom Scharpling and all of their tangential podcasts, and on 108.9 The Hawk, the radio improv homage to classic rock radio.
Yeah.
So yeah, this was episode 100. I can't believe we made it all the way here. Seriously, this is really cool. We've been doing this for a little over 2 years now.
Yeah.
And I really love making this show. I really do. And it's kind of taken over our lives a little bit. I do spend a lot of time working on it, editing, choosing films, setting up interviews, all that type of stuff. But I love doing it. I really love making this show. It is so much fun.
Yeah. The only thing is that sometimes I'll avoid watching a movie because we have to do that for the podcast.
Well, yeah, no, that does come up sometimes, but that's okay.
Yeah.
It's we only confine ourselves to a roughly 12-year period.
Yeah. Well, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, we give ourselves wiggle room. And speaking of which, I have thoughts on, once in a while, let's do an I Love the 90s month. Let's do get outside of our comfort zone and look at something like from the 70s. I know. But there are films from the 70s that I really want to cover, especially stuff that was definitely on when I was a kid, but I never got around to watching. I never saw The Bad News Bears. I wanted to watch Bugsy Malone. There's all sorts of kind of weird stuff.
When is 1941 from?
I think 1941 might actually be coverable in this. Oh, but a different Spielberg that I want to do for the show is Close Encounters. And that's 7. I know. I saw the last 10 minutes of it. So I know they go up in yeah, I know, but I haven't seen any of the rest of it.
I feel like there's different versions of that too.
Yeah, probably.
I know I watched it on TV, network TV, and that version's different than the one the theatrical version. There's all kinds of different versions of it.
I and I don't know which one we will watch for the show, but so I don't mind us kind of getting outside of the 80s sometimes. But for the most part, I do like keeping it to the 80s, because part of this is just films that people I know watched growing up that I just never got around to, or I didn't want to see, or I just never heard of. I don't mind the constriction of let's stay in this one decade, but there will be times where we'll be stepping outside of that.
What I like about staying in the one decade is that we don't have the chops of real actual movie reviewers.
Oh God, no.
We're not cinema.
We're not film critics. We're not professors, and we're not comedians. We're just two people who sit in a home office and we're not really anybody.
But what I like is that so we had tried to do like this whole history of film from starting from 1927.
We talk about that for a second. Well, before we did this podcast, we had an idea of doing a podcast where we watched the Best Picture winner each year and just, rate them and see what we thought of them.
And starting with 1927, and we got 3 years in, and it was a slug. It was like each episode was 2 hours, and we watched 3 movies for each one. And
we kind of shot ourselves in the foot with the first year because when the first Academy Awards is for the films of 1927, and they had 2 Best Picture winners. So we watched Wings, which was amazing, and we watched Sunrise, A Song of Two Humans, which is one of my favorite movies now.
Yeah.
And we watched The Jazz Singer, which, yikes. Although fascinating to watch. It is really interesting, the first use of sound in film, but it's also, oh no, because it ends with blackface.
It was just surprising how much Jewish culture is part of it for, 70% of it.
It's a fascinating movie.
Yeah. And then suddenly, wait, what are you doing in this scene?
Yeah.
Oh no. What are you doing for the rest of the movie? No.
Yeah. Yeah. It did not win Best Picture, and there's a good reason for that. Even though that was not the reason it didn't win, because they did not care about that in 1927. That was like the biggest hit, and not just because it was sound. But no, so we started off shooting ourselves in the foot by having to watch at least 3 movies, and then the next year we watched a bunch more. We tried to watch like every film that was nominated for Best Picture, and at a certain point you're trying to get through like 10 films in a month, and
it was a lot of fun. I loved watching those films, but it was just so much research.
Yeah,
and just...
we were reading books on the history of film. I read a whole thick history of the year 1927. I mean, we were doing a lot of research for this show, and we still didn't know how to make a compelling podcast. Yeah. So it's just us kind of talking, but I don't want to say it's dull, but it doesn't move. It doesn't move very quickly, and they're all at least 2 hours long. And I don't think those shows will ever see the light of day. I would love to actually someday maybe go back and try that project again, scaled down, just watch one movie for the most part. I mean, granted, 1927 is an unusual thing because they had 2 kind of Best Picture winners. Everybody says Wings, but they had like kind of a special Oscar for like the Best Artistic Film for Sunrise. So I would love to go back and try it again, but it was just so much work. It was too much work. Because we have full-time jobs. In fact, Dennis, how many hours of overtime did you have to work this week?
Oh, like 12 or something.
Yeah, exactly. We work a lot of hours. And we're also like taking care of my mother and sister. We're moving. We have a lot going on in our lives right now.
Yeah.
So to do this podcast at all, it takes a lot of work. I hope that people can tell how much we really do love making this show.
Yeah.
Which is just my way of saying, I hope you guys love the show as much as we love making it. I love doing this show so much.
What I was saying about our show...
Oh, about the
about
winners?
being in the 80s.
Oh, yeah.
Is that what I like about this is that, even though there's other shows that are probably better researched and maybe funnier or whatever, I like that because of our specific rules, like we end up watching movies that we would never look up.
Yeah.
Like sort of The Valiant or Honky Tonk Freeway. These are movies like we would not look for,
or even knew they existed. I had never heard of Honky Tonk Freeway. Oddly enough, a movie I think about more than you would think.
Yeah.
So I don't know. For some reason, that movie stuck with me, even though it's not a great movie.
Yeah.
But I mean, there was something I kind of liked about it in a weird way. It's funny how. And there are other films that I definitely should have watched years ago, and I'm glad like Hollywood Shuffle. There's a great movie. In fact, I think it's coming out on a Criterion edition soon.
Oh, cool.
And I'm so glad we finally sat and watched that film because it was fantastic. It was just a really biting satire, and I just loved it.
Yeah.
And so this is kind of forcing us to see stuff that we wouldn't have necessarily sought out. And without having the glow of nostalgia around it all the time. Sometimes Dennis has nostalgia for a movie that he saw, but we're 30, 40 years removed from it now. 40 years now. Jeez, oh my God. Ow. You come with a fresh perspective.
Unless if it's Rutger Hauer, then I still had that glow.
Yeah, but you know what? I get it. You're having fun. Yeah. You're having fun, and that's important. And I just, you have to be the right age sometimes to see a thing. That doesn't mean the movie itself is bad, but I think depending on what the film is, you're going to have a different relationship with it.
And I think that when you've seen the graphics back then, you're a little more forgiving of just how it looks.
Oh, yeah, actually, that's
It's
true.
so dated.
Yeah, you know what? But here's the thing: I don't mind dated because, okay, now here's a good example. You could look at the movie Masters of the Universe and say, well, look, the special effects, how could they be? You know, it's the 80s and it's a canon film, and yeah, it's their most expensive film. But you know, now we have CGI. Well, let me tell you something. You watch all of those scenes shot at night in Masters of the Universe, and you can see everything people are doing.
Yeah.
It is a much better lit film than any of these, you know, CGI monstrosities that are in theaters right now. Every fight scene is a blur, and you can't see anything because it's all cartoons that they didn't put the money into animating right. You can't see anything. Everything is murky. The screens look like I hate it. I hate what a lot of modern movies look like right now because they're so badly made, right? Is Masters of the Universe a good movie? Probably not, although I had a lot of fun watching it. But the thing is, you can see what's happening in that movie.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, you can also see the Skeletor face, and nobody needs to see, oh, poor Frank Langella. You know, he is trying his best under that thing, but
He had fun, it sounds like.
he looks like he's wearing whipped cream.
Yeah.
It's so bad. And I love it. I absolutely love it.
Yeah.
We've watched 100 movies now.
Yeah.
What's your favorite movie? What has stuck with you the most?
I don't know. The Apple was a lot of fun.
Yeah.
That was just a surprise. Like it was, like I guess I keep going back to that because it was such a surprise. Like I was like, I did not expect any of this.
The Apple was so much better than I was expecting.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, that like Moonstruck and Predator, like those were great.
You know, Moonstruck definitely stuck with me. Something Wild.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I can't wait to rewatch.
Oh yeah, that
Something
was fun.
Wild.
Yeah.
Man, that movie just everything about it like works. It's so good. That's one of my favorite things we've ever watched on this show.
Yeah, movies like
Valley Girl was great.
Movies like Slacker and Down by Law.
Yeah.
I already loved. So I was like,
Oh no, but Slacker is definitely and Down by Law.
It was more like, okay, I'm glad I'm glad I love them.
Yeah, no, you were absolutely right for loving those films. They're both fantastic. Yeah.
Metal Storm.
No. No. You want to get into the movies that have stuck with me in the wrong way? Let's talk about Metal Storm. Let's talk about The Toy.
Now, yeah, The Toy is. I think that's the worst.
That is probably the worst thing we watched for.
But
well, I don't know, man. Metal Storm is so boring.
Metal Storm is extremely boring, but we didn't see it in 3D. So if we saw it in 3D, who knows?
No,
Who
absolutely
knows?
not. No.
The goose squirts right at you. If you saw it in 3D, you'd be freaking out.
Yeah, no, that's terrible. The Toy is morally offensive.
And The Toy is a movie I watched a lot because it was just
How do you feel
always
about
on-
that?
It was always on cable.
You
and I
proud of
just-
yourself?
No. But it's Gene Wilder. Not Gene Wilder. I mean, it's Richard Pryor.
That's an interesting slip, though.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, eventually we'll get to a Gene Wilder
Yeah.
Richard Pryor movie.
Yeah, there's a couple in the 80s,
There's
aren't
Silver
there?
Streak. There's Stir Crazy.
Yeah.
I think what it is that like I always wanted to see a Richard Pryor film,
Yeah.
and and so you'd see it and you just keep on watching it, and you're like, man, this is okay, I guess.
Is it though?
Like you like his reactions and stuff, but then oh man,
No.
that's part of what I like about this show is that gotten to this point where we can compare different movies. Oh, Arthur, I think I've compared Arthur to that.
Oh, Arthur's such a better film, though. It's like maybe the same year-ish.
Yeah,
I went into that thinking I was going to hate Arthur, and I thought it was great.
maybe it's not. There's
Well,
another
it's
one.
Again, it's like a rich person who's spoiled, and you know, the redemption of the rich. Yeah, that's interesting. In the 80s, there is a whole like we're going to redeem this rich person style of film, which is kind of a throwback to the 30s. So you have not just like The Toy and Arthur, but Down and Out in Beverly Hills is another one.
These rich people aren't so bad, so let's not text them as much.
Yeah. So yeah, you know what? I'm ready to do 100 more,
All right.
and more than that. There's nothing stopping us.
To be honest, it really kind of flew by.
Yeah, I can't believe we've done so many episodes that we've been doing this for over 2 years now.
Yeah.
It doesn't feel like, and that, part of that is COVID. Part of that is, like we started this in 2021. We hadn't even gotten like our shots yet. I don't think, it was early enough that, I'm still like, when do I get my vaccine?
Yeah.
And now, for some people, life is very much back to normal. I mean, for us, it basically is. We go and hang out with friends again, and we go to, activities and stuff. But we get to work from home, The world is a different place than it was just 2 years ago. It's kind of hard to imagine that as much time has gone by and as many episodes have gone by as they have,
Yeah.
In the meantime, folks, you can follow us on social media. We are Mary vs. Movies on Twitter, Mary vs. Movies at Instagram, Mary vs. Movies at mas.to on Mastodon, Mary vs. the Movies on Tumblr. And no, I do not have that website ready for you yet. I don't know when I'll do that.
Maybe 100 episodes.
Yeah, I know. Maybe 150 episodes we'll have one. I don't. Look, it'll happen someday. Who cares? Does anybody go to websites anymore? It's all about the apps. God, I think I've even said that on here before. Oh, no. Anyway, we also have a Patreon, by the way, where you can help support the show and also get access to our second podcast, Hollywood Avalon, where we watch films of an Arthurian nature. That's right. We go into the Middle Ages, although sometimes it's modern and sometimes apparently the Transformers show up. I don't know. Yeah, so Hollywood Avalon is Dennis and I watching Arthurian movies, and you can get that on the Patreon for $3 a month, where you are also helping to support the show. And we will also send you, stickers, a button. We write a newsletter that you can sign up for. Well, you can get that through the Patreon right away, or you can also just, DM me or something on Twitter and say you would like to sign up for the newsletter. Our email address is maryvsmovies@gmail.com, so you can always sign up. Just write to us, and you can be added to the mailing list. And let's see, we're available on all of the major platforms. We're on Apple Podcasts, where you can rate and review us, so please do that, because, the more that reviews that we get, the higher, we get in their Apple standings, and people will find us, and, we do want to be heard by people. You can rate and review us on Spotify, I believe. I don't know how I've never actually rated anything on Spotify, but apparently you can do that. And we, of course, we're on Stitcher, we're on Google Play. You can go to Libsyn and get the RSS feed and plug it into whatever your podcatcher is. And so there are tons of ways for you to listen to us. Next week.
Oh.
That's right. Next week for episode 101, we have a choice between two period pieces. The first one is called Somewhere in Time, which I think is a time travel movie with Christopher Reeves.
Yay.
Which is kind of cool. It'll be fun to see him, not playing Superman.
Mm-hmm.
I've seen him in other things, of course, but this is one of his non-Superman things.
Eventually, we'll watch Death Trap.
Yeah, I'll be happy to watch Death Trap. You have a story about that.
Yeah.
So, Somewhere in Time versus A Passage to India, which is, I think, a British film.
Is that Alec Guinness?
Do I know? I have no idea.
Okay.
I know it's based on a novel by E.M. Forster.
Yeah.
But beyond that, I have no idea. I just know it's a British film from the 80s. So, but when I say it's a period piece, the novel was written, I think, in the 20s. So as far as I know, it's probably set back then as well. So, yeah, Somewhere in Time, heads, Passage to India, tails. All right. Oh my God, you caught it!
Whoa!
You caught it in the thing. Alana, he caught it. Alana bought us this. It's like one of those dice thing for Dungeons and Dragons, and he caught it, and it came up heads. So next week we will be watching the film Somewhere in Time.
I'm glad you remembered what that heads was.
All right. Until next time.
It's better to burn out than to fade away.